Okay, hi everybody. Matt Hurst, aka the Brew Noob here. It's Tallboy Thursdays, and you know what that means. We're drinking a Tallboy beer today, and today we're drinking Tecate. Now, if you joined us before, hopefully you got the word out following Brew Noob. You know that we're drinking Tecate, so hopefully you've got a can for yourself. If not, let me know what you're drinking in the comments or on Twitter. I'll be keeping close tabs on what's up. But without further ado, let's just jump into it, shall we? All right. This is something we do every Thursday during happy hour, and this is the beer for this week. So we're going to talk a little bit about it, and we're going to drink it, and hopefully, if you've got a beer, you're drinking along with me. So feel free to let me know what you think about drinking Tecate. So cheers to tasty beers. Hi, yeah, we're based in New York, and now if you're in North Carolina, do you get Tecate there as well? It's kind of a beer that I didn't expect to get in the Northeast when I moved here. It's definitely one you see a lot more in the Southwest. Yeah. And yeah, definitely you find it in California, and it's a good beer to get in California or in our nation's capital of D.C. Yeah, so actually Tecate is named after a border town on the border of California and Mexico, named, not too surprisingly, Tecate. And it is, it's one of the better Mexican beers in my personal estimates. And what better way during this week's Tallboy Thursdays, especially the week of Cinco de Mayo earlier this week, than to drink Tecate. So again, cheers. Now I'm based in New York, and we do get a lot of Mexican beers here. And yeah, really, you've been to Tecate? Wow, that is incredible. Do they have anything there besides the brewery? I believe they're actually brewed in a nearby town, not exactly the same city. That's a few years back, so you never know. Things can change, right? But Tecate is actually, all things considered, a relatively young brewery compared to a lot of the other Mexican beers. In fact, it's right, exactly. It's not brewed in the actual city of Tecate. Um, In fact, actually, if you check the cans, and this is one of the things we do on Tallboy Thursdays, is look for all the info and what they think is important. Sonoma. Okay. So according to one of our, you probably could see it in the comments, but if you're watching this later, you'll want to know that Tecate's, I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation of this, of course, in Sonoma, which I'm guessing is probably actually in Mexico. And if we look up on the can, it should tell us exactly where. Brewed and canned. Actually says it's made in Monterrey, New Mexico. No, Monterrey, Mexico. NL. However, this specific can was imported by Cervezas Mexicanas in beautiful White Plains, New York. So that's how it ended up in my doorstep. Everywhere around the country, you'll find specific places. But wow, that is interesting to have such a local brewer, especially for a beer that across the U.S. is actually owned by, well, or distributed by in the U.S. our good friends at Heineken USA, which distributes a lot of the import brands here in the United States, at least the ones that aren't owned by Bud or Coors. So, and yeah, I love Tecate. In fact, let me tell you a great trick with Tecate, and I know you're all ready for this. Now, a lot of you like to have, and I know I love it, when you have a good Mexican lager, put a lime in there, right? Lots of choices for that. But one of the great things about having a tall boy is you always have that big, wide mouth. So instead of shoving a little, teensy little cut of a lime into trying to jam it down the bottle of a neck of a beer, why not take a big, juicy quarter of a lime and shove it into that beautiful, wide mouth? Yeah, lime and salt's good. It's all good, actually. I may have picked too big a lime for this. Let's pretend that didn't happen, but oh. Yeah, this worked earlier. This definitely worked earlier, but it really, that lime peel does not quite want to get in there. I might have to cut it down. Well, you can't always win, but definitely, with the wide mouth of this can, you should be able to put a lime or really anything else you want to add to the beer much more easily than a regular can, which in my experience, I don't think I've ever seen Tecate bottles, but Tecate in cans is right up there for me. It's and why not go for the upgrade? And it is a beautiful can, by the way. It's You know, you get a couple different designs. Good old-fashioned cerveza there. Saborcon character. Yeah. One of the things I love so much is look at that beautiful barcode. You know, they could have just slapped any old barcode on there. Lots of brewers do, but that's just so creative, right? El Presidente is a great beer as well. We're definitely plan to try a different Tallboy every week, and this is the first time we've had Tecate. That could be a great one for a future week. I'm definitely, if you have any ideas about a beer you'd like to see on a future Tallboy Thursdays, or one you want to drink along with me and ask questions about, feel free to leave a comment or, you know, tweet me at BrewNoob. That is where this all started, gosh, 5 years ago. So, cheers. And if you're drinking along with me, you could be halfway through your beer right now. And think how tasty and refreshing you'd feel, especially on happy hour here on the East Coast. And if you're stuck at work, you know, good time to start happy hour early. Hopefully, you know, actually that's not a great idea, but join me, please, and please feel free to join me every Thursday. You know, right here live streaming on Periscope. And you can always send us a message at BrewNoob on Twitter, BrewNoob on Facebook. Of course, BrewNoob.com is our main blog and website. We'll post this video up there later, so you can always look at your questions and comments again. And BrewNoob on Foursquare, and of course, BrewNoob on Untapped, where I'll be checking in any second after this video. Yeah, so Tecate is definitely one of my favorite Mexican beers. It is, I'm not going to make comparisons because everyone has their favorite, and of course, like I always say, taste is very subjective, so, and very individual. You know, I find it has a clean body, and to me it's a lager beer, but it has a little bit of a Boddington's is a English beer, not a Mexican beer. That's a great idea, though, for another Tallboy for a future week. So, last week we actually drank Labatt Blue. The week before that, what did we drink? We drank a big tall can of Sapporo. And the first 2 weeks, we drank two of the most popular beers in the entire world. We drank a Coors Light and a PBR. Perfect Tallboy beer cans. Nothing highbrow about beer culture here on the BrewNoob. And that's what. But Tecate is, to my mind, this is more in line with the premium brand. There are lots of good Mexican beers out there. Not all of them are in Tallboys. Tecate, like I said earlier, you tend to find more in cans. When there's a greater diversity of good Mexican beers available in bottles, of course, but I find Tecate in part benefits from the canning process. You know, canning keeps beer fresh. You can store it on the shelf for longer, and a well-made beer like Tecate benefits from not getting any of the skunking or light damage that can be done to a bottled beer. So that is one reason we enjoy Tallboys, and I think this is a great exhibit of what can be done with a well-canned Tallboy of beer. So cheers. If you can think of any other Mexican lagers I may have overlooked, feel free to leave a comment. Tweet me at BrewNoob, particularly if they're in a Tallboy format. I did see, you know, there are lots of choices that can be made this week. Yeah, Tecate is a great beer for a barbecue. Obviously, Tallboys are nice. I find when I'm having barbecue, I would rather have actually a 12-ounce can of beer. That's just my personal taste, but we are getting towards that season now, so it's something to think about. Just because I find that a Tallboy, especially in a barbecue environment, you're already outside, you're near the heat, it warms up faster, and a beer like this deserves to be ice cold. Not all beers have to be ice cold, but on a hot summer day, and I'm sweating it out near a barbecue, I want an ice cold beer anyway. This is a perfect accompaniment. I'd say it has just a slightly dry taste, almost not, obviously it's not a Pilsner, but it's a close cousin, and I find that great to go with pork barbecue. I find that good to go with beef barbecue. If I was making, you know, everybody has their own style of barbecue. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, so we have a saucier barbecue, so this is easier for me to see with red meat than it is with white meat. So I don't really picture this with chicken, but I could see easily if you had like a chicken with like the dry rub on your barbecue, this would be excellent right here. So something to keep in mind. We'll definitely be talking a lot more about barbecue now that we're getting close to Memorial Day. And I'm glad you also mentioned barbecue because one of the reasons we picked the Mexican beer this week is because the beer industry itself is part of the reason why we celebrate Cinco de Mayo here in America. Wasn't really a greatly celebrated holiday until the 1980s when some of the beer importers in Texas actually started to promote it, including our good friends at Corona, who probably bear the most responsibility for why we celebrate Cinco de Mayo. They wanted to increase beer sales, and we're going to talk about that here in a second. I'm just going to get another sip in here. Yeah, so it's something I was reading earlier this week. We have a link to it on the Brew Noob blog. That's brewnoob.com. You can read a little bit more about it. But yeah, essentially, Corona really heavily promoted Cinco de Mayo as a way to increase beer sales, and they promote it as a holiday and how do you celebrate your heritage and how do you celebrate this holiday that's specific to part of Mexican history. Well, why not do it by drinking Mexican beer? And suddenly you saw bars and beer sellers in the American Southwest with tons of promotional decoration around that time of year promoting it as a holiday. And eventually it grew to be more celebrated greatly in Texas and partly in California as well, particularly in LA. And it did catch interest nationally in the late 1990s. So it took about 15, 20 years promotion within really targeting, the community within the United States. But it definitely caught on over time. And part of the reasoning is on May 5th also is just a little before Memorial Day, so kind of close to the kickoff of summer. It's just warm enough to start grilling. And people, I think, in a lot of ways were looking for an excuse, and this is very much quoted by the representatives of Corona that where in this article that I researched earlier and was speaking about. They said that it is the kickoff of barbecue season and the eagerness of people to get outside and drink beers and do the things we love to do during summer was a big impetus behind creating and creating Cinco de Mayo into what it is, which sells a lot of beer. About $600 million of beer sales in one day on May 5th every year, according to Nielsen data from 2013. So that is a pretty impressive amount of beer sales around holidays. So cheers. Cheers to holidays, to beers, and my personal favorite to drink on Cinco de Mayo, Tecate. Again, hopefully you're on the other end of this camera and screen. You're also drinking a beer that you love as well. So cheers. I hope that you're not drinking as much as $600 million, that question. Yeah, so Tallboys are great. They are, as we talked about before, we have 2 full cans of beer. That's usually my limit as well. I do tend to drink it a little bit faster for the sake of doing this. But definitely keep tuned. I love some of the suggestions that I've seen on here. For next week, we're considering going a different direction around the world with our next Tallboy. I usually give a hint to what it is because usually we let people guess what the next beer is going to be. And if they guess right, they'll get a prize, and I will send them a specific prize related to that beer. Probably should have thought of that beforehand. Let me just try to put this lime in the can of beer again, right? Well, I think about that for a second. Oh, this one's going to go. See, I just picked the wrong lime. Wrong lime, what you know? There we go. The one drawback of putting a lime into a canned beer is there's a greater risk of you actually cutting your fingers than there is on a bottle. So that's the thing. But, like I said, it's got a big mouth for it, so all we got to do is boop. Easy to do. That's a quarter of a lime right there, peeps. That's a lot more than you get in your crummy Coronas. Not that Corona's a bad beer, but it is nice to have a beer that is produced in Mexico and distributed and partly owned with the original. I think it's not just another brand that's brewed by one of the two big owners that own up 85% of the beer that's sold in the United States is owned by two companies, as you know. And sometimes we will drink those guys. Obviously, the very first week we drank Coors Light. So we will, but always interesting to have a Heineken-owned brand, and especially, you think Heineken, you think imports, you think snooty and bottles, and you think different, you hardly ever see cans. So this is definitely a unique beer for us to go for this week. What else can I tell you about this great beer? I will tell you that the website's not much to look at. I will tell you that I love chasing Tecate with tequila a lot. I recommend it highly. It's definitely my favorite beer to chase tequila with. So, cheers to that. Alright, so for next week, we are going to drink a beer that is brewed partly with corn. It's a Tallboy beer that's brewed with corn. If you think you know what that is, send a message on Twitter to @BrewNoob or to any of our other channels, Tumblr, on Facebook. It's the same name everywhere, BrewNoob. Send in your guesses, and next Wednesday we'll announce if anyone guessed correctly. We're going to go in a slightly different direction. We've been drinking imports for 3 straight weeks now. Time to go back. Possibly domestic beer. That's all the hints I got. Brew with corn, domestic beer. I see one more of you is watching. Rob, thanks for holding on. Very decent of you for hanging on this long. It was great sharing Tallboy Thursday with you. I'm going to go down my very last sip here. And, I want to say cheers to you, Rob, for tuning in this long. And cheers to everyone who tuned in or is watching this later. We'll definitely put up the video on YouTube. And we're going to build this out. Please join us next Thursday and every Thursday for Tallboy Thursdays. Stay tuned to BrewNoob on all those channels, and we'll let you know what we're going to drink next week. And cheers to tasty beers. Have a great weekend, and salud.